could click on hide.
Right. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
we'll get reserved. Okay, so you can get started.
Okay, no problem. All right, guys. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Shine Prosper, and alongside my group members, Aliana and Unella, we will be presenting on power and influence. So, so to start off, I just want to break down power and influence. Power is the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence other people to bring about desired outcomes. Influence. Influence is the effect a person's actions have on the attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of others. And then finally, I have leadership, how it ties into this. The action of leading a group of people or an organization. Now, before I get into it, the one thing I must say is that after reading this chapter, it kind of helped me break down how power and influence actually is in an organization because growing up, I always thought that power was all about just having control over other people in an organization, but it's much more than just that in itself. Okay, so here we go. So I want to go back to how transformational and transactional leadership ties into power and influence. So transformational leadership. Transformational leadership typically has a substantial impact on followers and can potentially renew an entire organization. Transformational leadership have the ability to lead changes in an organization's vision, strategy, and culture, as well as promote innovation in products and technologies. Rather than analyzing and controlling specific transactions with followers using rules, directions, incentives, transformational leadership focuses on intangible qualities such as vision, shared values, and ideas in order to build relationships, give larger meaning to separate activities, provide common ground to enlist followers in change process. Transformational leadership is based on the personal values, beliefs, and qualities of the leader rather than on an exchange process between leaders and followers. So the first person I want to put under the transformational leadership is Mr. Walt Disney. Walt Disney was a pioneer to American animation industry, entrepreneur, writer, voice actor, and film producer. In 1923, he and his brother Roy Disney would go on to create Disney Bros Studios, that what we know as Disney itself to this day. Now, this was a scene from Bass and Rego in 2016. They said that he showed idealized influence, having earned the trust and admiration of his staff, inspirational motivation where he was able to motivate his staff to see and support his vision for the company, intellectual stimulation where his staff were driven to be innovative and creative in their work. So basically, what Walt Disney would do is that at times, if some of his staff employees would experience a bit of frustration, which I would assume is creative blocks, I myself are a graphic designer and artist, and I experience creative blocks myself. So when I heard that he finds solutions in himself from himself to create ways for his staff to feel more open to create instead of coming down on them every minute and trying to force them into and instead of frustrating them, he would find ways to make them feel free and to express their creativity and express their emotions as well, right? So that is under what Disney for transformational leadership. Transactional leadership. Transactional leadership focuses on present and excels at keeping the organization running smoothly and efficiently. These leaders are good at traditional management functions such as planning and budgeting and generally focus on the impersonal aspects of job performance. Transactional leadership can be quite effective. By clarifying expectations, leaders help build followers' confidence. In addition, satisfying the needs of subordinates may improve productivity and morale. However, because transactional leadership involves a commitment to follow the rules, Transactional leaders maintain stability within the organization rather than promote change. So the person I would put under this type of leadership is Mr. Steve Jobs. Just to give you a quick background of who he was, Steve Jobs was an American magnate, industrial designer, investor, and media proprietor. He was widely recognized as a pioneer of the personal computer revolution and developing the company we know today as Apple. He was known as a very tough boss, known to follow strict rules and principles. As a perfectionist himself, he had little tolerance for errors of others. Staff mistakes were often met with humiliating lectures or a quick sacking. So basically, at times, how I could say this, Steve Jobs, he mostly focused on the company itself. He wanted the company to grow and to always, have that perfectionist type of aesthetic to it. He was always competitive to always be on top. And as you can see from what I put here, there were times he would basically come down on his employees. And everything was about humiliating, embarrassing, and even some of the staff themselves complained a lot about how his actions were, and they felt like why would they be employed in a company like this when he himself said that he would always go out and look for the best and he would always be this type of person, but in reality, when they were hired under him, he acted in a different persona. So that's everything that revolves around Steve Jobs for the transactional leadership. Now I'm going into charismatic leaders. Charismatic leaders have the ability to inspire and motivate people to do more than they would normally do, despite obstacles and personal sacrifices. In describing the charismatic leader one business word says, he or she persuades people, subordinates, peers, and customers to do things they'd rather not. Charismatic leaders have an emotional impact on people because they appeal to both the heart and the mind. They may speak emotionally about putting themselves on the line for the sake of a mission, and they are perceived as people who persist in spite of great odds against them. So I have two people who I place under the charismatic leadership. First, I'll start off with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was an American activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the civil rights movement. He was the youngest man to receive a Nobel Prize for his words of combating racial inequality through nonviolence. I apologize for the little typo error there. During the years 1957 to 1968, King was elected as the president SCLC, where he traveled over 6 million miles and spoke over 2,500 times across the nation. Most famously known for his iconic I Have a Dream speech that took place at the march on Washington protest march that occurred in 1962. So Dr. King, he showed a lot of charismatic leadership qualities, always putting himself on the line for the people. We know he is a strong advocate for the Black lives for practically most of his years of being alive on the earth before he was assassinated. And he would always speak about the injustice that Black people had faced during the times. And we always saw him standing on podium giving all these incredible speeches to always uplift Black people and try to bring change within the Black community, and for white people to understand that it wasn't always about a war that Black people wanted against white people. And he just wanted racial and slavery to be abolished for Black people to just live a normal life. Another charismatic leader I want to place is Aung San Suu Kyi. And she is a Burmese politician, diplomat, author, and awardee of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. She is famously known for her activism as the leader of pro-democracy movement in her country of Myanmar, in which she addressed the brutal mistreatment that her fellow people received from the army of junta. Basically, to give a side-by-side comparison, her country faced a similar situation what Nigeria is facing from SARS at the moment, where the army were taking advantage of the people, but in Nigeria, it's basically the police service that is doing it. So in the year of 1990, where she had won the general election for the Nation League of Democracy (NLD) by a landslide, accumulating over 392 of the 492 seats. In the same year of 1990, she was arrested and placed under house arrest for over 15 years by the junta, where they overturned her results. During her time under house arrest, the junta offered to release her if she leave the country and never return to politics, but she refused, vowing to serve the people of Myanmar until death. So basically, she also showed a lot of charismatic leadership qualities. You know, she always stood by her people's side. She saw the injustice and the brutal way that the junta army had treated her people, and she felt like enough was enough. And her being under house arrest for over 15 years, I think she was released in 2003. And after she was released, she still went back into politics and still kept fighting for her people in Myanmar to this day. Right, so this is a little chart diagram I got from in the text of non-charismatic leaders and charismatic leaders, the likeness, trustworthiness, relations, the status quo. Just to read it through a bit. Under the non-charismatic leaders, you have shared perspective makes leader likable. Under the charismatic leaders, we have shared perspective and idealized vision make leader likable and an honorable hero worthy of identification and imitation. Under trustworthiness, we have disinterest, advocacy, and persuasion attempts. Under the charismatic leader, we have passionate advocacy by incurring great personal risk and cost, right? And so goes on for the rest under relation to status quo, future goals, articulation, competence, behavior, and influence, right? So moving along, we have 5 types of leader power, which are legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and referent. And you can see that the position power is what holds legitimate, reward, and coercive, and the personal power is what holds expert and referent. So to start off with the legitimate power. Legitimate power is the authority granted from a formal position in an organization. For example, once a person has been selected as a supervisor, most workers understand that they are obligated to follow his or her direction with respect to work activities. Subordinates accept this source of power as legitimate, which is why they comply. Secondly, we move on to reward power. Reward power stems from the authority to bestow rewards on other people. For example, appointed leaders may have access to formal rewards, such as pay increases or promotions. Moreover, organizations allocate huge amounts of resources downward from top leaders. Leaders tend to control resources and their distribution. Lower level followers depend on leaders for the financial and physical resources to perform their tasks. Leaders with reward power can use rewards to influence subordinates' behavior. Third, coercive power. Coercive power is known to be the opposite of reward power. It refers to the power to punish or recommend punishment. Supervisors have coercive power when they have the right to fire or demote subordinates, criticize or withdraw pay increases. For example, if a salesman does not perform as well as expected, the sales manager has the coercive power to criticize him, reprimand him, put a negative letter in his file, and hurt his chance for a raise. Coercive power is the negative side of legitimate and reward power. Now, to give a little short story about this, I actually recently spoke to a salesman in at my work at our school, and he spoke about how the accounts manager had actually came down on him with regards to some goods he actually was tampered with while he was delivering it to a customer, and he actually received the same, basically the same type of behavior from the accounts manager with regards to Council Power, where he received a letter due to the fact that he damaged the goods and said that the money would be come out of his pay, and he felt a certain type of way about it. And I was actually listening to the story, and it actually came straight back to this, so I know I actually firsthand saw this in action itself, right? Moving on to expert power. Expert power results in from a leader's special knowledge or skill regarding tasks performed by followers. When a leader is a true expert, subordinates go along with recommendations because of his or her superior knowledge. Leaders at supervisory levels often have experience of the production process that gains them promotion. An example of this type of leader would be Mike Isku of UPS, who worked at the organization for so long that he understands so much about all aspects of the business that employees accept that he knows what he's doing when he peers into delivery vehicles, inspects warehouses, or walks along conveyor belts. And finally, referent power. Referent power comes from a leader's personality characteristics that command followers' identification, respect, and admiration. So they want to emulate the leader. When workers admire a supervisor because of the way he or she deals with them, the influence is based on referent power. Referent powers depends on the leader's personal characteristics rather than on a formal title or position, and is especially visible in the area of charismatic leadership. And that comes to end for me for my PowerPoint presentation. And now I'll actually pass it on to Aliana. Sorry. So I stop presenting.
All right. Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Can everyone see the PowerPoint as well?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'll continue off where Shaim left. After the 5 types of power, there is the responses to the use of power. Leaders use the various types of power to influence others to do what is necessary to accomplish the organizational goals. There are 3 main outcomes that is a result of the use of power. So the 3 responses are compliance, resistance, and commitment. I just realized this, sorry. So compliance. With the successful use of the positional power, the response is compliance. Compliance means that people follow instructions of the person in power and carry out, obey the order, whether they agree or disagree with the decision. The problem with compliance is if followers disagree with the decision but still follow the instructions, they do the bare minimum of work needed to satisfy the leader and may not contribute their full potential. Now, on the opposite scale, resistance. If the use of positional power exceeds a level people consider legitimate, people may resist the attempt to influence. Resistance is therefore the act of disobeying orders or deliberately avoiding carrying out instructions. The effectiveness of leaders relying solely on positional power is limited. So it can either go compliance or resistance with positional power. The follower response, most often generated by personal power, is commitment. As you know, commitment means adopting the leader's point of view and enthusiastically carrying out the instructions. So we all understand that we all have our different commitments. So these are different diagrams. So on the right, you see that in resistance, um, on the left, the diagram shows the resistance, compliance, and commitment. You see a bit of different. You see some of the powers in the diagram where it has oh god, I can't spell that. Anyway, let's skip to the next one on the right side. On the right side, there's the diagram that's taken from the book, where it shows that the positional power leads to either compliance or resistance, and the personal power leads to commitment. Now, the role of dependency. One of the key aspects of power is the function of dependence. So, as you know, dependence is usually, an example of dependence would be how we, as children, we depend on our guardians or parents in the beginning of life. So they have the resources, they have all these different things that we may need. So they have greater power over us because we depend on them. The nature of dependency relationships between leaders and subordinates in organization fluctuates depending on the economic circumstances. So as we know, when employment is low and jobs are plentiful, people feel less dependent on their supervisors, and managers are more dependent on their employees because they are hard to replace. So that is a good example on this. If unemployment, oh, I went through that, sorry. On the other hand, but if jobs are hard to come by and unemployment is high, organizational leaders have greater power over the employees because most people are dependent on their organization for their livelihood. This dependency primarily affects the leaders' positional power. So now control over resources. Dependency within organizations is related to a person's control over resources. Resources include such things as jobs, rewards, financial support, expertise, knowledge, materials, information, and time. People in the organization must be perceived. People in the organization must perceive, sorry, my typo, the resource as important. So as you know, sorry, hold on. I think I skipped something. No, I didn't. Okay. So as you know, if nobody wants what you got, it's not going to create dependency. So people people rely on what you have or what you can contribute. Scarcity refers to whether the resource is easy or difficult to obtain. So, like, for example, we can talk about precious minerals or as well as different resources um, as in gases or water. Those different. You know how water is easy to come by. There's a large resource for this. It's easier to obtain than gas. Gas has a lot more action needed to obtain it. So sometimes gases have more scarcity than compared to water. Now, non stability means that leaders or employees with control over resources with no viable substitute will have more power. These resources may include knowledge and expertise, as well as access to people with higher power. So now we have a diagram of these different characteristics that I just explained with the importance, scarcity, and non stability. Now, on the left side, we see that at the bottom it says low dependency on leader equals low power. So, in comparison, if the leader has control over resources seen as unimportant or resources are widely available, as well as resources with acceptable substitutes, they have low dependency on the leader, therefore the leader has lower power. While on the right side, when leaders has control over resources seen as very important, has scarce resources, and resources with and has resources with no substitutes, there's a high dependency on the leader itself. Therefore, the leader has higher power. Now, we're going to talk about the sources of power in organizations. So, as you know, well, you don't if you haven't read, in organizations, additional source of power and influence have been identified. In the strategic contingencies theory, power sources are not linked to a specific person or position, but to the role the leader plays in the overall functioning of the organization. So, in regards to the theory, the sources of power include interdepartmental dependency, control over information, centrality, and copying with uncertainty. So here's a diagram showing the connection of all four of them to the increased power. Interdepartmental dependency. Many organizations, in the interdependency is one key source of leader power. For example, as you know, if one department has more information or more resources needed, they would have more leverage over another department that would need it. So therefore, the resources and information may flow between departments in one direction. So an example of that is in the cigarette factory. One might expect that the production department would have more power than the maintenance department. But that is not the case in a cigarette plant near Paris, apparently. The production of cigarettes was a it was a but this was a routine process. Sorry, hold on. The machine was automatic. On the other hand, maintenance department workers and their leaders were responsible for the repair of the automatic machinery, which was a complex task, and they had many years of experience. So there, you would think that in a certain one department would have more leverage than the other. As you know, with the creation of different products, sometimes the machinery department will have more leverage than the the product department or the sales department sometimes. So now materials, resources, and information I already went through that, sorry. Although there is a trend control over information. Although there is a trend for empowerment and broader information sharing, some people will always have access to more information than others. Control over information is important source of power to leaders. For example, as we know, usually it's always the higher ups in the organization that have more control over the power of over the information that's given to each department. All right. Most leaders recognize that information is a primary business resource, and that by controlling what information is collected, how it is interpreted, and how it is shared, they can influence how decisions are made. Now, to some extent, access to information is determined by a person's position in the organization. Top leaders typically have access to more information than do lower levels supervisors and other employees. So they would typically have more control. However, control over information can also be a source of power to lower level leaders and employees. For example, as a CEO of a company, you would need the managerial or the marketing department to produce information so that you, the CEO, could make a decision to further the organization or in how to conduct the organization. Centrality. Centrality reflects a leader's or a department's role in the primary activity of the organization. One measures the centrality, one measure of centrality is the extent to which the worker of the leader's department affects the final output of the organization. So, as an example, at a company such as Intel, which is heavily technology oriented, engineers have a high degree of power because the organization depends on them to maintain the technical superiority of its products. Centrality is associated with more power because it reflects the contribution made to the organization. So once one department or one leader contributes more to the organization, they would automatically have more power in the organization. Copying with uncertainty. In the face of uncertainty, little information is available to leaders on appropriate courses of action. Leaders in the department that cope well with these uncertainty will increase their power. Power relationships in organizations change as strategic contingencies change. So as you know, even with even if one even if one department is heavily relied on, the relationship can change if another department or the conditions needed for another department to have more power is in present. We cannot control how things will be. We can't control how markets will be. We can't control how product quality will be. So therefore, sometimes if quality of the product is better than the quantity of the product, one department will have a higher leverage than the other. Strategic issues and uncertainties are continually changing for organizations, which leads to shifting power relations. So as I just explained, if the quality of a product is more important to the market than the quantity, there would be more power to the department that's dealing with the quality or the production itself of the product than sales telling people that okay, they have to make more of a product, because the company would therefore be at a disadvantage. Therefore, one department would have more power in that situation. Now I will hand you over to Anella so she can talk about power in the power when it deals to politics activity. Oh, do you have any questions? Anyone? Hello?
No question.
No, we don't have no questions.
No
So I don't
questions.
have any questions.
No question.
I will hand it over to Anella now to
Okay.
deal with this.
Just now this presenting taken. Why not share?
Click on present now.
Yeah. Click that. Oh yeah, man.
And yeah, we're hearing you. And then
Alright,
select what you want to share.
and I can share my entire screen and
Yeah. Then select
um,
that. And then click on the share screen.
yeah, but it's 10%.
Anella, once you press when they give you the option to share your whole screen, and after that you get to see the share screen icon where you see in your screen, press it and then press share.
Uh, let's see. Okay, no, it's not person earlier. Watch right. Yeah, hello.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. Alright. So my name is Onella and I'm going to speak about increasing power through political activities. Okay? Power isn't enough to be performing central activities or dealing with organizational uncertainties. Leaders at times should be recognized and appreciated by others. Getting and trying to use power is more of a political process. Politics involves activities to acquire, grow, and use power and other resources to achieve his or her future goals. When there is uncertainties or disagreement about decisions in the organization. Leaders that are great with politics strive to do their best, understand others' needs, desires, inputs, and goals. They also try their best to encourage others to help the leader reach his or her goals for the organization. Okay, and these are some of the good leaders that have examples of some good leaders. Mahatma Gandhi, who was an Indian lawyer and a political activist. He helped India to gain their independence from British rule, and he inspired many civil rights and freedom across the world. And Nelson Mandela was a South African politician and philanthropist. He was also Africa's first black head of state and first elected in a fully representative democratic election. Okay. Leaders at some organizations have some political activities to help the government policies. Dealing with government isn't always all that good. They're always sending you around and around and around just to do one simple thing. Some organizations use political activities to try and affect decisions to get what they want, such as getting a promotion. Not only organizations use political activity, but also the department and individuals. There are always going to be conflict and doubt in organizations, but there are always going to be politics there to help achieve things that cannot be helped by policies or the position power. Leaders use politics to grow their personal power, such as doing more than their job description or doing work that are different and also joining committees. Doing these things would help them meet new people that have connections and would help them with their reputation and also their development into becoming a good leader. Another political approach is impression management, sometimes called self-presentation. It means people control how they are perceived or viewed by others. Some ways you can master impression management are be self-aware of who you are, be thoughtful, a great listener, and be open to others' suggestions. Try to keep your emotions under control and don't have any outbursts at the wrong time. Some display of emotions are good. Some display of emotions are good. Know how to behave and dress at different occasions. Always be courageous, even if you are not, and stand up for what you believe in. And be positive in everything you do. So don't be thinking negative. Tactics for asserting leader influence. Different tactics or steps can help any leader be a better one and help them reach their goals. And to help them influence the organizations and those outside in the public. Some of the leaders' moves may not always go well with their followers. So leaders need to know how to best make a better move to help their followers. Here are 7 principles for asserting your leader influence. Use rational persuasion. Rational persuasion is using facts, data, and logical arguments to encourage others. To encourage others. To encourage others to be to have a good idea or request that would be the best way to accomplish a goal. Rational persuasion is successful when the leader knows what he or she are doing. Sometimes some issues cannot be backed up by facts, which can cause some problems. But if you are a good leader and know what you're talking about, it will always come across as something good. Make people like you. People are more likely to help a leader that are friendly, fair, respectful, and has concern for others. So if you have an attitude, they're not going to want to follow you. Rely on the rule of reciprocity. If you have what someone wants, then you should share it. It will help you turn that into a great power, turn that power into influence. and it will be easier to get favors. Develop allies. A leader can get allies by reaching out or going to important parties or through friends. Reciprocity is important because it can also help you develop allies, people who can help reach your goals. Ask for what you want. Asking for what you want and being straightforward can help you have influence. Leaders use their courage to confide confidence talking about their visions. I think I've seen that one. Goals and changes to encourage others. Leaders should be forceful, take risks, and try and achieve their goals. Remember the principle of scarcity. When people want, what they can't have, they will want it even more. Just like caviar. That just hardly get it, and it's very expensive and people will still buy it. Leaders can put their suggestions or offers in such a way that people would think that they are getting a sneak peek inside or getting something that is better than the others. This is only effective is when you pick some information that isn't everywhere and release them. Extend formal activity with expertise and credibility. To have a successful formal authority is knowledge, reliable and trustworthy. Managers who know their stuff are honest and get to the point and have more influence. Leaders who follow these steps can do great things. Ethical use of power and politics. Power and politics in organization is like politics in the government. There are leaders that help guide the group, workers, and then there is company's mission statement and procedures that every worker must follow. Some people see leadership as an opportunity to use power and influence to get ahead in their organization, but some people take advantage of it. For example, I got this example from the book. Rosen from a financial company says his colleague will go to the boss and chin up his head. He was eventually demoted and the colleague was promoted. There are a lot of people like him out there that use power and politics for their own selfish needs at the expense of others. I just like how my sister just trained up my mother head to get in trouble all the time. You know? Yeah, personalized and socialized leaders. Personalized leaders only think about themselves, sometimes selfish and impulsive. They will bad talk about you and do anything that will get what they want. An example for a personalized leader is Bernie Madoff. He's a well-accomplished Wall Street trader. His knowledge in finance gave him power, and people trusted him with their money because of that. But instead of investing their money, he took it and funded his extravagant lifestyle, like going to different countries on private planes and all that kind of thing. The socialized leaders use power to achieve their goals that will help others. They will try and uplift you and encourage you to do your best. Right. My next example is Rick Sasso. He is the CEO and president of MSC Cruises. Since he started working in the travel industry, he has been a great leader and role model. He is considerate of others and his organization. He is a real good role model. Unethical use of power. There are unethical use of power such as sexual harassment, which is increasingly bad for organizations. There are leaders that know their workers need them for cooperation, their jobs, and other resources. They would use that to try and get sexual favors or get some sexual comments towards you. They sometimes tell you that if you don't do any sexual favors for them, they will fire you or make your work a living hell. And every time you go to work or see that person, you're going to feel uncomfortable and violated, and you don't want to go to work anymore. Might have to eventually leave the work. Some companies have policies in place to help protect workers, but it doesn't always work because sometimes the leaders, the company CEOs and them will try to keep it between them, and it doesn't always go the right way of the victim. It's always go the way of the abuser. The County of Santa Barbara has a 6-month training for leaders, supervisors, managers, executives, and attorneys to take. So they will know how to be able to deal with the sexual harassment. Some leaders can't tell the difference between unethical and ethical use of power and politics. The line between the two may be blurred at times. This is a little diagram that I get from inside the book, the text, that show questions that you could ask yourself to know if your choice is ethical or unethical. The first question is the action consistent with the organization's goals rather than being motivated purely by self-interest? Second one is, does the action respect the rights of individuals and groups affected by it? Third one is, does the action meet the standards of fairness and equity? And the last one is, would you wish others to behave in the same way if the action affected you? And I used to always tell me that one. If you don't like it for yourself, don't do it to others. Just in your head. Right, and to top off everything, before conclusion, the PowerPoint, power and politics are important. But sometimes putting the two of them in one sentence doesn't always be good. Because power is associated with some bad things also, and also politics is associated with bad things. And people will take advantage of the two. And there are different types of leaders that use their personalities to help them be better leaders. But it sometimes can also be bad because they might have a bad personality and then they would try to think it towards you and you wouldn't want to follow them. Transformational leaders encourage people to go beyond themselves to achieve great things. To be a good leader isn't hard. You just have to ask yourself, is it helping others or if it's hurting them? Just remember, if you're hurting them, then it's not something good. All right, so that's the end of our presentation. Do anybody have any questions? So nobody don't have no questions?
No.
No.
Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to pause the recording now.